Hello and welcome back to MSI 2022 in Busan, South Korea, where we kick off the semifinals today with a clash between the LPL's Royal Never Give Up and the LCS's Evil Geniuses. Here we see them now arriving at the Busan Exhibition and Convention Center, getting ready for that important best-of-5 series, looking to extend all the way to a finals. I'm Dash, and I am more than pleased to be joined by one Vedius.
Hello.
It's been a while, my friend.
It's been a little while, yes.
How you doing?
I'm great now. I'm great now.
Operative word now that you get to join us.
I'm really excited to be back, yeah. So it's nice to be in a suit again and talking about some League of Legends.
And looking good, my friend. Well, let's get right into it. Obviously, I've had the opportunity to be surrounded by plenty of experts throughout the Rumble stage, but your analysis has been noticeably absent in that time.
Thank you, my friend.
So as we pull up the standings in the Rumble stage, just to get a quick refresher, we do see RNG atop the table, T1 taking up that second slot before G2 Esports and Evil Geniuses round things out. But basically, I just wanted to turn to you and kind of get your recap of how things broke down between our top 6 teams.
Well, I think that in terms of expectations, it kind of went the way that everyone expected in the end. The beginning, super excited. A lot of us Europeans were high on copium. You know, when we saw the 4-0, a lot of us were like, this is Europe's
2019
time.
again,
yeah,
let's
exactly.
go.
But then we all remembered, oh, it's 2019 again, which means they're going to go 5-5, and then reality immediately hit us like a truck. So the results kind of went as expected, but I do have to give a big shout out to the VCS and the PCS, because I think that while they did not qualify for the top 4 here at MSI, in terms of expectations, I think they went above and beyond.
I was going to say, you talk about a truck. That truck has a name. It's PSG Talent.
Exactly.
Hit G2 squarely in the face. But we also have to talk about the Saigon Buffaloes. Again, just a reminder to everybody that this is the second seed out of the region that had to come in and put up a performance like they did. And to snag those 2 wins that they did near the end of the Rumble stage, I think it speaks to the overall power level of that team and their potential, even if in every moment of the stage, they weren't able to show us.
And remember how close they were to taking down RNG as well.
Right.
Like, this team showcased a lot, and as you rightly said, they are only the 2nd seed from their region. And I think that they went out and acknowledged that while they think they did well, there's more for them to show. And they think that Vietnam as a region also has more to show. So I'm super excited to see what they can do at Worlds. And for the PCS, even after the loss of players like Maple, who are a staple and star of the region, I think the region still has a long way to progress and can still challenge internationally. So very excited to see these 2 teams once again once they make it to Worlds, I'm for sure.
And ultimately, we have PSG Talent to thank for making the Rumble stage interesting, because as we spoke about, it was that quick 4-0 start for G2, which made it feel like, okay, things are going to go as expected. They're going to go to chalk, and we're going to have kind of a solidified top 4 very early on. But because of those dropped games to PSG, things got interesting all of the sudden. And similarly, Evil Geniuses managing to pick up that game against T1, I mean, that did wonders as well in terms of their overall standing and the way they maybe look and feel moving into the knockout stage.
Yeah, I think EG have to be credited to their very rapid growth. Coming into this tournament, I think we already saw a very high level of performance from Inspired and Impact in particular. I think that as a team, the veterancy really shone through where the rookies were struggling, and that's very much to be expected. But the rapid way in which the team adapted to make sure that these younger players felt more comfortable, and the fact that Jojo has only gotten better at lane throughout this tournament, I think is a big credit to the development and confidence that a lot of these players have.
Now, what do you ultimately make of the G2 journey? Because again, it was that hot start. Yes, they did stumble, but recovered and still, landed squarely in 3rd place. I feel like, at least from my personal stance, that G2 in their highest moments has actually looked like the best team at this tournament. Again, isolating their best games.
For sure, I think that it's definitely fair to credit them for their performances, especially early on. My only issue with G2 was that they were very exploitable in terms of what their strengths and weaknesses were. And I think it was just a matter of time until teams found a consistent way of being able to exploit those weaknesses. And we had a great interview with Broken Blade where he talked about how without those scrims, without the ability to go back, reset, reevaluate, and change, I think that they were very much stuck in their ways, which is why they ended up in a slump, which is why this time off to prepare, come back is why I think many fans are excited to see what they can do in the best-of-5s, and I'm hopeful that they can put a strong showing.
Yeah, from there, we're left with the 2 tournament favorites, the pre-tournament favorites in RNG and T1. RNG taking that top slot, moving out of the Rumble stage, T1 just behind them. What do you make of these 2 squads?
They're very good.
Fair to say.
I think that I'll start with T1 by saying that T1, I think, coming to this tournament, were a little overhyped. I think Atlas did a great job of kind of highlighting and bringing us back to ground in terms of this team did have up and down consistency issues during the regular season. They lost to teams that you didn't actually expect them to lose to, but that's because while their early game and mechanical prowess was dominant, their mid to late game did often left something to be desired. And I think once again, we saw that at this tournament. But again, the rate at which these players grow is phenomenal. And while we credit EG and their young players being able to adapt and get better on the international stage, these players are also showcasing that arguably even tenfold. So this team is hungry. They are eager to prove themselves internationally. They want to maintain the dynasty that is the SKT era, and they want to get back on top. So a team that's very terrifying and a team that you know is going to be scary in the best of.
I'm going to say some inconsistency throughout the tournament, but consistently a dominant early game, and that is something to be fair, particularly led by some of those rookies. Talking about Zeus in the top lane. From there, we go to RNG, though, defending champions, and they find themselves once again in that #1 slot, well positioned to defend their title.
I really do think that RNG is right now looking like the best team. Their consistency is incredible, and while towards the end of the group stage they did showcase some weaknesses, ultimately I think this is a super well-rounded team with many options that looks like the favorites, as you rightly said, to win the whole thing once again.
Well, we broke down the Rumble stage. Let's take a look at the bracket that we have ahead of us when it comes to the knockout stage here at MSI. The first best-of-5 series that comes today at Sports RNG against Evil Geniuses. The winner of that match will move on to the finals to play the winner of either T1 versus G2 Esports. Looking rather familiar to something I've seen in the past. If I'm being honest, feels like maybe our MSI scriptwriters are getting a little bit lazy here, as it's recalling 2019 MSI. Feeling very similar, where we had a #1 seeded LPL team followed by T1 specifically, and then of course G2 in that third slot. Yes, NA managed to pick up, I guess, one more win than that time around, but we know how that one played out.
Yes, we do. And I think that we're on track for another repeat performance based on what we've seen from the scripts. Truthfully, like, you know, LPL, LCK, very good regions, but you know, it's only best ones. It's Europe and NA really shine in the best ofs, as we both know, Dash.
Exactly, and that's where you take that historical...
That is exactly what I take from that, yes.
Exactly. So, I mean, we already clearly know how these best-of-5s are going to play out with an LPL versus NA matchup and an EU versus LCK matchup. But all that said, we still have to do our journalistic due diligence here, you know, ultimately in previewing the match. And so while this is how it played out last time around, and of course we largely expect it to go the same way, we should still talk about the two teams that step onto the stage today in RNG and EG. In order to do that, we're going to bring in Lyric and Emily to talk about the two teams competing on stage today.
History repeating itself. Going to be a tall task for this Evil Geniuses roster. This RNG, a different beast. And even just going back to last year, where they picked up another LPL title. They won last year's MSI. That wasn't enough for this team. They came into 2022, swapped superstar top lane Xiaohu back to mid, where he has such a wealth of experience, picked up young aggressive star Bin, who everyone will remember from 2020, and the ceiling looked higher than ever. Sadly for RNG, there were some hurdles to get over at the start of the split. We saw them having a hard time acclimating Bin to the roster, especially with how aggressive he likes to play. Wei had a very hard job. He was confused with the identity that RNG was trying to play through, but luckily for them, they had the Tiger King of Spring back in the mid lane, Mr. Consistency, stepping up, carrying games non-stop for RNG, got them into playoffs with a pretty solid record, and that's where things finally started to click for them, enabling Bin more in the top side, moving Xiaohu back to this facilitating, roam-heavy play style, which he knows so well, and that's where RNG were able to step up, pick it up in finals, and get themselves their 5th LPL championship.
And by contrast, you know, EG went through some kind of similar roster changes. Jojo Pyun pickup in particular, a lot of people in North America didn't know how that would work out, so it was kind of weirdly criticized at the beginning. They had a phenomenal start to the season in lock-in tournament, looked really, really strong until they got swept by TL in the finals. And then what happened happened is those inconsistencies really started to show. EG were actually unable to string more than 2 wins in a row throughout the entirety of the spring season. And behind the scenes, everyone kept saying, every player I talked to was like, oh man, EG are so good in scrims, and then they just weren't the same on stage for whatever reason. They could never find their footing. And then everything changed in the best of 5 against TL in the upper bracket LCS playoffs. Even though they lost that, EG came back with a vengeance, kind of stormed through the lower bracket. A lot of it was because I think their drafting improved significantly, and then additionally their preparation in what they were trying to do against their opponents. We saw kind of the stuff we saw in lock-in tournament with Inspired and Vulcan kind of setting up the team for success also happen really consistently in playoffs, and then obviously Danny popping off in 5v5 fights. 5v5 fights are something I know RNG, though, absolutely love.
Yeah, and especially coming into this MSI. I mean, this is the Emperors of Spring Domain. They look so comfortable at this tournament. We've seen them return back to what made them so successful in 2021. That mid-game macro playing out through side lanes has just been absolutely beautiful. We've seen Xiao once again just stay on these roaming, enabling mids. And luckily for Gala, Kai'Sa is back in the meta. He's popping off, having great games every single time. It's going to be a tall task for EG today.
Yeah, especially since, you know, EG came into this tournament, didn't have a really strong meta read, in my opinion. You know, G2 had their number in groups and in Rumble stage, even when EG had improved. And so, yeah, I know, right? So I think, like, the other cool thing to see, though, from EG was a similar trajectory to what we saw in playoffs, right? Where they started off very, very shaky, and then as the tournament went on, their drafting improved. In particular, Danny on comfort picks like Jinx and Samira, even when I personally was a little bit iffy on those drafts, EG showed that they really could play like super, super well around them. And once again, getting Danny in a position to carry with setup from Inspired, who's having a great tournament, Impact, and Vulcan. And going up against RNG, it's actually a really interesting stylistic matchup because a lot of the stuff they've put JoJo on have been those facilitating mids that we've also seen from Xiaohu, but Xiaohu kind of does it better. And for more on that, we're going to go straight over to Vedius to talk about RNG's playstyle.
Thank you very much, Emily. Yes, I'm going to take this opportunity to talk a little bit more in depth about what is going on with RNG and why they're so good in this neighborhood tactics presented by State Farm. So, as we're going to bring up the telestrator, the important thing that I want to highlight is RNG are a very good team. That shouldn't really come as a surprise, but I wanted to use this clip as an example to illustrate how good they actually are. And unfortunately, EG, you will be my example in this situation. Please forgive me. Now, as we watch here, you're going to see RNG set up a dive towards the bot side of the map. The dive looks very good, but this is not the emphasis that I want to focus on. What I want to focus on is what happens after the dive. So after they get this kill onto Vulcan and take the plates, here I'm going to very quickly pause, bring up the minimap, and highlight exactly what it is that they want to do. So, first thing you'll notice is that these two are going to go back to base. Cool, nothing too uncharacteristic, and as they clear out the base, these two are going to head over towards the Drake. So everything looks pretty good, but then follow on what happens next. Wei is going to clear out the Drake, Ming is then going to look to reset, and then Wei is going to continue to clear his jungle as both Xiaohu returns to mid to catch this mid wave, and then Gala is going to path back towards bot to catch this wave that is slowly coming in as well. And what I want you to do is keep your eyes on the minimap, because you're going to notice that while this is all happening and while Wei is clearing out the bot side of his map, look at where Ming is going. He's going to use these hex stakes to actually move up towards the top side of the map, and he's going to use this information to start putting vision down in the top side of the jungle. This achieves two things. Number one, it's going to cover for top laner Bin, and it's going to make sure that in the event that, because Wei wants to clear his bot side, that his top side camps don't get invaded as well. Xiaohu's going to clear out mid, bot is going to get cleared out, and then again, while this vision drops, look at what Wei is doing. He knows that he still has vision around the bot side jungle. Gala wants to push in this wave so that he doesn't get ganked. He is also covered for. So RNG right now are covering for the top side of the map with vision. They're also covering for the bot side of the map with deep invade, and Xiaohu is also posturing for a potential roam in the event that some action happens. So remember that the last thing that they did was they took a Drake, they dived, they took a Drake, and now they're resetting back out onto the map. Wei yet to actually reset. So after the cover is done. You'll notice as well that they helped clear out the mid wave, and then Xiaohu is going to move up towards the top side thanks to the pressure generated by Ming in order to then threaten for a kill on top. They're going to get that kill on top. Very easy execute thanks to Bin leveraging the wave as well. And then this is the craziest thing about all of this. Wei, after clearing his bot side camps, resetting, actually left his red buff up, and then Gala came and took it because Wei needed to reset and go back towards the top side of the map. He couldn't be left isolated in this lane so that he wasn't wasting time. They gave him the red buff. While all this is happening, Ming is also covering for the mid wave. He's going to catch this mid wave. Xiao is going to take this. And what does that do? It gives RNG control over the Rift Herald. Like, it is so impressive how RNG are able to control every single lane, cover for every possible attack avenue, while also maximizing their efficiency in terms of farm, map control, vision, and everything. It was just such an excellent demonstration from RNG of how to play the map and how to leverage so much mobility from jungle, support, and mid lane together.
I mean, that was a full few minutes where RNG owns 3/4 of the map, has full agency to go wherever they want. It is a perfect painted picture of what makes this team so strong.
Average Tuesday, someone said.
Exactly. Or a Friday, as it is today. I mean, it is one of those things where it's one thing to feel like the opposing team has that kind of ownership over the map, and it's another thing when they actually do have that kind of ownership over the map. And that's where we're going to put a big spotlight then on EG and ultimately how their play style comes up against this. We already know, and we've already kind of painted it as an uphill battle. But let's start over here on this side, Emily. Let's start to build the story of what it is that EG looks like when they're playing their best.
Yeah, and I think you see some similar set plays, again, coming from Inspired and Vulcan particularly, but also Impact, in the way that they want to play the map, right? Because we did see, starting all the way back in Lock-In Tournament with JoJo on the Twisted Fate, the team really trying to see if he was on something in mid that he could then radiate pressure outside. So this is actually a clip from their Lock-In event with just kind of a simple TF play on the top side of the map. But this really categorized what I initially saw from them in NALCS, which was a bit unexpected considering how much of a carry potential, JoJo was advertised to have. This has been kind of the way that they wanted to play. Here is another example of one of their team compositions where they're running the Diana Yasuo into Team Liquid in the semifinals. So they can play a variety of different styles, but especially recently in this tournament, we've definitely seen more of a shift towards, once again, set plays from other players on the map, and then JoJo on something where he can go to side lanes. And I think the biggest difference, obviously, between him and Xiaohu is just a wealth of experience and a significantly better understanding of when to time that wave pressure.
And I think that what Emily does a great job of highlighting is how EG is kind of taking a very similar path in terms of RNG, in terms of trying to be very flexible in their approach, in terms of how they want to try and impact the map, largely through that mid-jungle support type of dynamic. And I think that EG have done a great job of demonstrating the wide array of styles, because when I think back to the LCS finals, I think of a very team fight focus approach where it was very much about front to back team fighting, putting a lot of the eggs on the Danny basket, and why it was very much about that narrative. But again, they're continuing to show that flexibility. As she highlighted in this recent tournament, we've really seen a lot more of a step up from JoJo and trying to impact those side lanes.
Yeah, and I feel like when we're hitting on EG overall and talking a lot about mid lane, you just hit on it, right? Support feels so important for the squad. I feel like, especially going up against Ming, Vulcan's going to play such a pivotal part. He's going to have to step up, have a bit of a better day, because we've seen Vulcan is very willing to roam. I think specifically against Saigon Buffalo, he was on the map pretty much the whole game, but it's about finding the right timers, especially finding the right lanes to impact who can have a big role. And when you're going up against Ming, like I just said, it feels like that's where RNG have been outclassing this EG roster, and we're going to have to see more.
Yeah, especially when you compare their bot lanes, right? Because I think Ming and Gala are certainly a stronger duo lane, which means that Ming is probably going to get those first roam timers anyway, because they'll just be able to get better resets with the way the lane plays out. I know Dash can remember when Vulcan had like some of the lowest duo proximity of like any support, and it was something ridiculous. It was like 4%. Obviously, that's not going to happen in this game, but like the thing is, it's going to be really difficult for him to match the correct timers coming out of Ming, I think, based on the way those 2v2s play.
And it speaks to, I think, to some degree, kind of that back and forth nature that we've seen in EG in terms of styles, right? In in some cases going for that ultra Danny-oriented composition where he's playing something like the Tom Kench and wanting to try and protect him as much as he can versus what we've seen here at this tournament. Attempts to get towards the mid lane, open up JoJo to affect the map. We'll see which style they decide to take into today's best of 5. But either way, Vulcan always integral to EG's success when they do find it. All of that said, when this matchup is talked about, I hear two names mentioned more than any others. And of course, that's the two names in the mid lane. Our featured matchup presented by Mercedes-Benz. It's the battle of generations in the mid lane. Xiaohu versus Jojo Pyun.
New blood versus old blood. A young talent looking to make a name for himself versus a seasoned veteran who wants to make history once again.
我觉得这些选手参与比赛的话，只有走到终点赢下冠军才算成功吧。
Jojo Pyun carries the weight of North America's expectation on his shoulders, but even coming in as the massive underdog, the confidence of this talented mid laner has never been broken.
There was some heat after the RNG game after we lost, but I mean, it just happened and we're all over it now.
Gotta disengage. Can you buy time? Stopwatch burn. In they go. 1 and 2. This could be the fight for EG. Looking to knock down the top lane. Zeus drain tanking. A Gale Force works well. Vulcan steps away, and it's a 4 for nothing.
The first game we had versus T1 was good though, so yeah, I'll take that.
On the other side of the rift, we have the two-time MSI champion Xiaohu. He will expect nothing less of himself than to represent his country in the finals and take home the trophy.
T1 making the cross-map play, though. Carry it up towards top lane, playing with Zeus. Xiaohu now looking.
Root into Charm, guarantees it, nicely done, but he's out of cooldowns. Ult into W, second auto. Makes it happen, barely enough damage, knows the limit, and gets the kill.
With the 0-2 record versus RNG, the odds are stacked against evil geniuses. But we've seen giants fall this MSI, and the stage is set for a repeat of the 2019 semifinals.
Expectations be damned as Team Liquid take down the reigning world champs.
EG 的话，到目前为止，我个人了解还不是特别多吧。希望他这次比赛中就是能给我留下一个比较好的印象。
I think the biggest threat of this tournament right now is RNG. They're the best team right now, but I don't really think like anyone is unbeatable.
In our featured matchup presented by Mercedes-Benz, the youngest player at MSI goes head-to-head versus one of the biggest legends of the LPL.
In terms of expectations, I have to say that this is not the matchup I was expecting, because when you think of Gala versus Danny, in terms of the storylines, the history, like, that was what I was expecting, but you have to give credit that Xiaohu and JoJo have been so important to the success of their teams, especially at this tournament, in terms of early game control, impacting the map, and just the kind of star presence that they bring. JoJo's rapid growth is making a massive impact and drawing attention.
I was going to say, I actually think star presence there is maybe the most important thing. There's something to be said for the way that JoJo has approached international events, his level of confidence, and how that can bleed into kind of the atmosphere for the rest of the team. I will paraphrase in quoting a tweet that Vulcan threw out ahead of this matchup. Basically, if someone had told him a few months ago that he'd be playing RNG in a best of 5 at MSI, he would have thought they were crazy. But the fact is they're here, and they're going to walk in with, you know, whatever level of confidence they need to just throw it all out, right? I mean, that's it. You've got nothing left to lose. So let's see if you can take the defending MSI champions all the way. And who better to lead the charge than the young gun in the mid lane in Jojo Pyun.
And I feel like it's going to be important, right? Because Xiaohu is the heart and soul of RNG. You can even just see the way of no matter if he role swaps or not, they still play the same stylistic way. It's still based all around him and what he's able to do on the map. And I mean, this is another guy who can play like a breath of styles. He can play things like the Galio, the TF, the Silas, but can play things like the LeBlanc and look to be the primary carry. So we're going to be looking at JoJo to see if he can match that this time around. Because sadly in the Rumble stage, he wasn't able to do it.
Yeah, and one thing that's super interesting when we look at the stats is that, you know, JoJo's lane percentage is actually more than I thought it would be, given how much they have tried to send him to side lanes. And I feel like when we saw RNG kind of falter at this tournament, it has been through, you know, G2 attacking mid-jungle, Saigon Buffalo, who almost came out ahead through...
Please, EG, please.
Yeah, B&J and Froggy just like kind of going super, super hard in that mid lane. And I think that is, if EG are kind of looking for a little way to shift their play style, maybe, you know, like try out JoJo on a super like hyper carry, you know, like what could go wrong?
If you're down 0-2, yeah, just throw it out.
Yeah,
You know,
just
let's go
just
that
go in
direction.
there.
I think you do it from game one.
Really?
I want to see them heavily attack Xiaohu. Like, seriously, send everyone mid, crush him in the mid lane, don't allow him to have any impact, and then, you know, it becomes harder to shot call when you're behind as well. Just come on, EG, destroy Xiaohu. For everyone else's sake except mine.
Right. Yeah.
I actually personally hope you don't do that. But
I like it though. Attack the experience, right? Attack the leader. You know, cut off the head, and maybe the body goes with it. Who knows, right? It's time for some predictions as we narrow towards this best of 5. We're gonna go down the line. Vedius in the hot seat right out the gate. You're back on the broadcast.
Yep. Short and sweet, 3-0, RNG.
Okay, all right. That's kind of what I expected out of you, and I almost expect no less from the next one in the line.
I just gave the unbiased, here EG do this, so now LPL bias coming in, RNG 3-0.
Okay, all right, but that's all right because I've got the LCS rep at the end of the desk. It's Emily Rand. Please hit me with that spicy take.
Dash, do you remember we were in Houston and I like did this whole thing and the crowd was like booing me,
right.
You know? Like,
right, so you're not going to ever give people a reason to boo you again.
Man, you know, like I really believe in EG. I love what they've been doing.
I like
and then
where this
I
is
predicted
going.
against them and I'm doing the same thing here.
Oh my goodness,
But hey,
come on.
you know what?
But at least like a 3-2? No, a 3-0?
No. 3-0.
Come on, can I buy a game?
Oh, no.
Every time I predicted against them, if you remember, they won.
Actually, all right. Maybe
So
this is the best vote of confidence we
I'm
can
just
get.
not cursing
Could
them.
be.
All right, fair play there, Emily. All right, so quite clearly everybody expects this to be a dominant victory for the defending MSI champions, and I think that is perfectly reasonable. But then I do want to talk about and challenge everybody to come with the ways in which EG does take this series. So thought exercise, win conditions. Lyric, you touched on a couple already with the idea of attacking the mid lane. Let's expand a bit.
Yeah, I'd just love to see JoJo come out on something more aggressive. We've seen him, you know, be a primary LeBlanc player, things along those lines, get an aggressive jungler. Inspired, I think, has been very willing to gank in this tournament and playing around his lanes, primarily with JoJo. And we've seen Xiaohu struggle. We've seen against Buffalo, where BJ and Froggy were just continuously hammering in mid lane. Xiaohu was getting solo killed by Caps numerous times. And I feel like that's a plan that they can replicate that also worked in the LPL. That's why RNG struggled so much against top esports.
For me, it's that. I really want to see them do that. But then also for the setup on that, I really want Inspired and Vulcan to be on the same page. Like we talked about Vulcan, how he's been shaky in some of their games at this tournament. EG is at their best when Inspired and Vulcan are both controlling the map to set up plays for players like JoJo, especially Danny, to come in and just carry team fights and skirmishes.
Speaking of, when we talk about their best victory in terms of you know, opponent strength, Vedius, people are going to look to that T1 game.
For sure.
What can we learn from that?
Well, for me, one of the big things is giving Inspired agency, and we put this easy to execute comp, and I think when we say that, what we really mean is right now, your best performing player this tournament has been Inspired. And when you give him a champion that can choose when the fight happens, has the agency to create opportunities for his team, this is where I think their team fights look the strongest. We think back to Danny being a reliable AD carry team fighter. Throughout the finals, he was able to consistently dish out damage, and you're seeing a clip on your screen right now, but he can only do that with the appropriate setup. And I think they can draft in a way with things like the Nocturne Galio that gives Inspire that ease of execution with a team comp that can very readily and easily follow up.
And going back to something Vedi already mentioned, I'm really glad you did, was the variety of playstyles that we did see from them in playoffs. Another one was that Yasuo-Diana combo, right? Again, giving Inspire the agency to go in with JoJo following up on a carry, and those team fights, as we saw from the TL clip I pulled earlier, worked out really well for EG then as well.
It's very interesting to me because I think typically when we look at a matchup that feels lopsided, we index towards, okay, hone in on a singular strategy, that one thing you're really good at. But interestingly here with EG, we're kind of talking about two different possible avenues to success, which I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, right? Like, did we spread our resources too thin and maybe should have gotten better at a singular strategy? Or do we like having more tools in the playbook that, hey, if we drop one version of a game in game one, we can move to something else entirely and challenge RNG in a different way in game two?
I think that when we look at RNG, one of the big things that I tried to illustrate with that clip earlier is how well RNG can be super efficient and controlling in terms of what they do on the map. And I think that as Emily has pointed out a few times, is that a lot of what EG has tried to do, RNG is already very good at.
Yes.
And so when we kind of look at their breadth of options, it's very much like what approach will they take in today's series? Because when you're going up against someone that feels like they do everything you do but better, it feels like that you have one of two things. You either tunnel in on a single strategy, as you highlight,
right.
But my approach is very much just go in with a plan game one, be willing to change your plan in game two, and be very flexible, because you've shown that you can be flexible. And in a best of 5, you're going to have to adapt and pivot on the fly.
Tough position to be in. I know where the three of you stand. Now I'm curious where the fans at home stand. It's time for our MasterCard fan predictions. Make sure to vote at MasterCard Nexus on Twitter every single day to be a part of the broadcast with your predictions. And as the numbers fly up on the screen, I'm hoping somebody's gonna. There it is. There it is.
This?
Look, the fans are giving me what the three of you can't.
The fans are providing hope. So much
Hope, exactly. Hope only to be ripped away from me. It is a close vote at that, and we'll have to ultimately see how it plays out. With that, though, there's nothing left to do but to get into this best of 5. It's the LPL against the LCS. It's the defending champs against an underdog team in our first semifinal here at MSI. Let's get out there to the stadium.